How do we let go of attachment? This is something that so many of us seem to struggle with. It can seem very difficult or even impossible, but it's actually very simple. And it could be that we just don't understand it properly, or it could be that we're going about it all wrong. And I get this question from people all the time. How do I let go? So first of all, why do you want to let go of attachment? You've probably heard that attachment is the cause of suffering. And so perhaps you want to let go of attachment in order that you no longer suffer. But do you actually see how your suffering is caused by attachment? Or is this just a concept? Is this just something that you've heard or read someplace? Or do you actually see how your suffering is caused by some attachment? So this is the first step, to recognize that some particular attachment is causing you to suffer, and to actually see this for yourself, not as some concept or theory, but through your own direct observation. By sitting with your suffering and going into it, you come to see what is giving rise to it. And you might find that it's due to some particular attachment, or you may find that it's due to some kind of resistance. Resistance and attachment are really two sides of the same coin. Attachment and resistance, desire and aversion. These go hand in hand. It's just different ways of looking at the same thing. But let's say, having taken the time to observe your suffering, it becomes clear to you how it arises due to some particular attachment. You're attached to the desire for something that you don't have, and so you suffer. Or you have something, but you're afraid that you might lose it, which is also attachment. And that attachment causes anxiety. But in both cases, you find that your suffering is arising from this attachment. So now the question becomes what to do about it. How do you let go of it? Many people say that they don't know how to let go. Or they might say that they've been trying to let go, but unsuccessfully. They just can't seem to do it. So what I'd like to do is just take you through a very simple exercise. And depending on where you are at this moment, some of you can do this now, or you might try it later on, or you may just follow along with your imagination. But it works best if you actually do this. So what I'd like you to do is find an object that you can hold in your hand, something that isn't fragile. For example, I have this potato that I grabbed, and I think a potato works really well for this as long as it hasn't been cooked. But you could just as well use a ball or something else, anything that isn't easily breakable. Or it could be something breakable if you're not too attached to it. And if you need a minute to go and find something, you can pause the video. Okay, so whatever object you have, I'd like you to just hold it in your hand and make sure that you've got a firm grip on it. I want you to hold it as tightly as you can, squeezing it and really making sure you've got a very firm grasp on it. And so holding this object very tightly and firmly, just begin to take notice of how it feels. Notice the sensation of the muscles in your hand and wrist. Notice the tension. And you may even notice some tension throughout the extent of your arm as you grasp tightly onto this object. And I just want you to take a moment to really feel it. Feel the tension as you hold tightly to that object. And now what I'd like for you to do is just let go of it. And having let go, notice how everything feels at this moment. Notice the muscles in your hand becoming relaxed. Notice the tension beginning to dissolve. And let me ask you this question. I gave you two tasks. One was to hold on, and the other was to let go. Which of these two required more effort? So you see, it takes a great deal of energy and effort to hold on to something. And that holding on creates all kinds of tension. And if you hold on long enough, it can become very uncomfortable. The tighter that you hold on, and the longer that you hold on, the more unpleasant it feels. But letting go, on the other hand, doesn't require any effort at all. In fact, it's simply the releasing of all effort and allowing everything to just relax. And in that relaxation, there is a sense of relief. Everything softens. All the tension melts away. And it's the same in terms of attachments or anything else for that matter. Letting go means that you release and relax. And as I mentioned before, that attachment and resistance are essentially two ways of looking at the same thing. When we're attached to having something that we don't have, at the same time, we're in resistance to the fact that we don't have it. The current reality is that I don't have this object or this person or this situation or experience, and I refuse to accept it. I refuse to accept the current reality. And because of my refusal, because of my resistance, I suffer. So what's the solution? It should be quite obvious. The solution is to accept what is. Rather than being in resistance to the current reality of the situation, which is only causing me to suffer, I can let go of that resistance by accepting the current reality. And this acceptance is a kind of relaxation, of allowing everything to be as it is, rather than pushing against it or trying to force something, but instead just letting it be as it is, decompressing and expanding into a more open state of being, just like opening your hand. And yet, we may still find this very difficult to do, to simply accept things as they are, to drop that resistance and let go of the attachment. All of this may make a great deal of sense to you. Logically, you understand it. Logically, you see how simple and effortless it is to let go. And yet, in practice, it may still feel extremely difficult. So, why is that? Rather than focusing on letting go, ask yourself, why am I holding on? Why do I have this particular attachment? It's not enough to simply recognize the attachment. We need to understand why we have this attachment. And so you really have to explore it and see why the attachment is there in the first place. The reason we tend to be attached to some object or person or to a situation or experience is because we believe that it's going to provide us with something else. It's not the object that we're really after, but rather what we think the object is going to do for us. We think that it's going to make us happy or fulfilled. Or in the case of another person, that they're going to provide us love or validation. Or it may be something else. But you have to figure that out for yourself. And you have to look at your own attachment and see what it is that you're really trying to get. So it's important to understand what it is that we're really after, to recognize that it's not the object or the person or the situation that we're wanting so much as what we think it's going to provide for us. And then we need to explore whether or not it really can provide it. When we get something we want, we tend to feel happy in that moment. But we tend to mistake the object as the source of our happiness. But what's really happening is that in that moment, our desire is fulfilled. And so the desire drops away. And it's really that dropping away of desire that allows us to feel happy. Just being fully in the moment is what allows us to feel happy. And that happiness is really just the absence of desire. And so it was always there in you. It was available this entire time, but it was obscured by the suffering that is caused by the attachment we have to some particular desire, to wanting that particular object or experience, and the inability to accept and appreciate the moment as it is. If we could just drop that desire, which means not to be attached to it, we could be happy with or without the object. Or let's suppose you desire to be loved. And when you meet someone who wants to have a relationship with you, who is giving you all of this positive attention and affection, we feel loved in that moment. We feel validated. We feel worthy. But that feeling is really coming from within you. The other person isn't the source of that feeling. Rather, it's the way they engage with you that awakens that feeling within you. But it was always available. It's just that we needed someone to remind us of our inherent worth, to remind us of our lovability because we doubted it. And so the mistake we make is to think that we need the other person in order to feel that we are worthy and valuable and lovable. And so when they leave, we think that we've lost our source of love, failing to recognize that we have all the love we need already within us. So when it really comes down to it, whatever it is that we're really wanting, whatever it is that we think this object or person or situation is going to provide us, chances are we already have that within ourselves. We just need to uncover it. And that can be a bit of a process. It may be covered over by all sorts of beliefs which need to be investigated and challenged. And it often takes a bit of time and attention to resolve those false beliefs. It's something that you have to consistently attend to. It's not something that tends to happen instantaneously. But every time that we're feeling unhappy due to not having something, or due to the thought of losing something, we can take that as an opportunity to explore this a little more deeply. But once you dissolve those barriers, those blockages, and discover that happiness in you, that peace, that love, or whatever it is that you've been trying to get from someplace outside of yourself, once you discover that and allow it to move in you, these attachments begin to soften and dissolve. And then letting go just happens naturally. If the attachment for some particular object is arising from a desire to be happy, once you discover that happiness within you, what need is there for the object? You no longer need it. You recognize that it's not going to make you happy. You already have that happiness, so the object is no longer needed. And you can still have things, you can still have relationships, you can still have all kinds of pleasant experiences. But you don't have to be attached to them. You can enjoy them when they're available, and you can be content when they're unavailable. In fact, there's a realization and acceptance that everything is impermanent. Things come and go. Experiences come and go. And if we're not attached, we can still appreciate these things and enjoy them without having to suffer in their absence.